Good morning. For most of you, it's another soggy morning, as my image indicates here. And we've actually, in some parts of the state, we've actually had now several weeks of up until the last 2 days drier weather. But again, as we were reminded here over the last couple of days, that can change quickly. And the long and the short of it is that the weather pattern that we have observed here for much of the last 3 or 4 weeks likely to continue. Cooler, and actually I think we're going to be trending a little bit towards the drier than normal side here over the next 1 to 2 weeks. I'll talk more about that in a second. Manny talked a little bit about where we've been, but needless to say, another significantly cooler than normal week here. That's the mean temperature departures from normal on the left. Most of the state anywhere from 4 to as much as 8 degrees Fahrenheit below normal. Not quite as extreme as where we were the week before, but just as importantly, and maybe certainly for the present time here, given where we are in the season, with people trying to get work done, a big weather system here moving through the Midwest with lots of precipitation. And it has varied. Most all of the state has gotten some precipitation out of this particular event, but ranging from less than a quarter of an inch in some far eastern portions of lower Michigan to more than some areas here north of Grand Rapids up towards Muskegon are nearing 4 inches for the total. So more than a whole month's worth of rainfall in just a couple of days. So again, a lot of variability, but a significant precip. And unfortunately, we have another day for those who've had too much rain here recently. We still have one more day to deal with before things start to dry out. One little interesting tidbit, I think, which is, it is interesting. It's been some time, actually, all the way back to since late summer, where the drought monitor, the Drought Mitigation Center out in Lincoln, Nebraska, it's been so wet across much of the Midwest, including Michigan. They haven't had much business, which is not a bad thing. But it is interesting to note that before the current weather system here, last week's U.S. Drought Monitor actually had an area here in central lower Michigan that actually moved to the D0 or abnormally dry. And again, that's the first any drier than normal conditions that have showed up in Michigan in some time. Of course, given where we've been over the last couple of days, that's going to be reissued here today. It'll come out this morning. I suspect that will be gone, but it is interesting to note. You could argue, of course, at this time of the year that that's not all a bad thing, as some of the work that Manny mentioned with our progress obviously has been done in some of these areas that did dry off enough to get some field work done. So again, a little bit of a flash, just something we haven't seen for some time. Degree day totals Manny talked about, but most of the state, at least a full calendar week, some cases in the northern part of the state, more than 2 calendar weeks behind normal where we typically are. Again, chalk it up to the 3 to 4 weeks of below normal temperatures. Soil temperatures from the 30s in the far north to some low 50s. These are average bare soil 2-inch values. And back to the question, just remember too, when you're measuring the soil temperatures, it follows, especially that 2-inch level down in the planting depth zone, it follows fairly closely the air temperature. There's a little bit of solar radiation that plays in that, but you're going to find the minima just usually right after sunrise, right at those hours just at or after sunrise, and then the maximum would occur in the late afternoon, typically in a normal day. So, and then of course everything in between. We get a rapid rise in the morning, especially if there's sun involved, but that you have to take that into account. There's a fairly strong daily cycle with those soil temperatures, just like there is with air temperature. Well, where are we headed this morning here? A large area of low pressure centered. It's near Grand Rapids this morning, and if you've been watching the weather map, this system has moved literally less than 50 miles in the last 36 hours. That's pretty uncommon. It basically got to the Great Lakes region and just sat there. It is filling in or weakening. Down here in the lower left, you can see the radar time lapse here for the last hour and a half, and you can see the precipitation spinning around the center of circulation again, which is down here in southwest lower Michigan. And so today we will be looking at pieces of that moisture. It had a lot of Gulf of Mexico moisture with this particular system, but it will be, in contrast to yesterday, especially in the night before, it should be mostly scattered showers. And so what we're dealing with today, with possible exception here of the northern lower, there's a little bit more in the way of precip expected there. but generally a tenth or two of an inch. So we aren't looking for any more heavy rain with this particular system. The other thing about this is finally it's expected to move. We should see it start to move to the east-northeast and into Ontario and into New England here over the next 24 hours. So it is going to finally pick up and move during the day today and ultimately allow for drier conditions or drier, once again, dry conditions to develop here overnight and into tomorrow. Tomorrow, Friday, should be actually one of a really nice day in most areas, decreasing cloudiness after the morning, but we should see also a recovery in temperatures from the 40s and 50s today, abnormally cool once again. Tomorrow they're going to bounce up at least 10 degrees, and I think most areas of the state tomorrow will see full maximum, even the northern parts of the state, well into the 60s. So it'll improve very, very quickly. You can see high pressure settling over the state here. Late Friday night, early Saturday morning, this weather system that's out here in the northern plains will make its way across the region. It's weak. It doesn't have any moisture to work with, but it will cause a few scattered showers, primarily in northern areas of the state. I don't think we'll see anything, probably not for the lower peninsula. If it does rain, it would be in the far north. And then that sets up a pretty much a fair and dry and mild. We'll actually call it near, maybe a degree or two even above normal for our temperatures here this weekend. Mostly, once again, in the 60s. We could make a run at 70 degrees once again, at least in southern parts of the state on Sunday. So it will be very, very pleasant here over the weekend. And then in the same old, the weather pattern that we've been stuck in, we have another Canadian origin air mass that makes its way into the state on Monday and brings down, once again, cooler than normal conditions for the bulk of next week. So the next chance really for any significant precip after today, I think won't be until maybe Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe of next week. And right now, that is not looking like a major system. After that, probably not until the next weekend beyond that. So we are moving into a cooler and drier than normal pattern. In terms of precipitation totals here for the next week forecast, they range from maybe a half of an inch in the far northern lower here. Again, most of that falls today. Also here across sections of the eastern part of the lower peninsula, and notably they have been missed by a lot of the precipitation in the current system, but they should pick up a couple tenths during the day, especially over the next few hours here this morning into the early afternoon. Most of the precipitation you see here in the forecast is forecast today. And after that, should be very, very light, generally a tenth of an inch or less here moving through the weekend and into next week. So again, most spots will be drier than the normal. Our medium range forecast, I've got the incorrect dates here. I apologize. This should be for the 7th through the 13th of May, but essentially both the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlooks, and this has been the case for the last few weeks. They're very consistent, almost identical to one another, and they call for this same upper air pattern here with ridging out over western North America, troughing over the east here, Midwest here in between. We're stuck under northwest flow, and with that, a series of, again, of Canadian origin air masses making it into our part of the world, and as a result, a very strong forecast of below normal mean temperatures. That's here up in the upper right with all the blue color here, and for precipitation totals down below, near to below normal. Again, both 6 to 10 and 8 to 14 day outlooks are calling for that. So I guess a question would be, well, how long can this go on? We've seen this now for basically, this would be a month of this pattern. There are hints with the numerical guidance maybe of a change, but right now we keep adding another week onto this as we go through our virtual breakfast series here on the Thursdays. What looks like it may be a moderation, the same pattern reverts back, and it's pretty uncommon to go more than a month with the same upper air pattern, especially during a transitional season month like April into May. But we are talking now of a continuation of this pattern at least through the end of the first week and into the second week of May at this point. So look for cooler and drier than normal. That direction is a pretty good bet. So summarizing here again, showers today, one more day of wet weather, but it should come to an end here by this evening or overnight. Unseasonably cool today with temperatures only in the 40s and 50s. But then that sets up a very, very pleasant, nice day tomorrow with dry weather and sun for most areas and temperatures bouncing back into the 60s. For After that, besides northern parts of the state on overnight Friday, Saturday, probably no precipitation or no threat until the early part of next week. But even with that, still expecting most spots less than a quarter inch for the entire week. And then as you saw just here for our medium range forecast, we are moving into a cooler than normal pattern once again next week. I have noted here that we probably will see some frost and or freezing temperatures once again. I think it will be confined to northern parts of the state early next week, but it's something to keep an eye on. We probably will see some 30s even in the southern part of the state early in the week with that next Canadian air mass. But again, I don't, at this point, don't see anything severe or significant like the hard freezes that we saw over the past 2 weeks. That was fairly, that was very, very abnormal, and it doesn't look like we'll see air that cold, but there will be at least a threat of near freezing or slightly below freezing temperatures. And then beyond into the middle part of May, again, cooler and drier than normal. And with that, I'll move to a reminder for an invitation for next week's virtual breakfast, and we'll have Dr. Kurt Steinke on next week to talk about soil fertility issues, so at the same time and same location. And with that, we'll wrap up and see if anybody has any questions.
Jeff, there is a question for you. It deals with soil temperature. To clarify, soil temperature time measurements take the temperature at the time of day that planting would occur. Is that when we should take it? Or then they have in parentheses, expect temperature to drop overnight below recommended optimum.
And I think this might be a tag team with Manny but I think Manny's comment was we should be really looking at targeting the time that we're trying to plant to take our temperatures. And again, there will be a distinct change each day between the afternoon and the morning, especially if it's a sunny day.
I definitely agree with Jeff. I think we got to be looking at when we are planting, right? And if we are planting soybeans early, we are recommending to begin planting in the early afternoon, right? Just to allow those soil temperatures to warm up a little bit. Because when you're planting, that's when that soybean or even the corn seed is going to start imbibing water, right? So I think it'll make a difference there.